Hi everyone, and welcome to the channel, and I'm here for a list video for you guys. Now for this list video, I'll be going over 6 underrated metal bands. Now I know I've done a video like this before, but I figured that it would be cool to do an updated version of this list because, well, this list has obviously been updated, of course, and most of the bands that are on this list I actually got into this year as well. So yeah, I guess this is the year where I get into underrated bands or not so well-known bands or whatever. But yeah, so let's go ahead and begin with this list. This is in no particular order either. So I got 6 bands here. Now the first band I want to talk about is Fear Factory. Fear Factory is a really great band, and I'm really excited for their new upcoming album, I believe, which comes out in June. So yeah, definitely a really great band. I would actually say that my favorite album from them would be Obsolete. Now I know some people go with Demanufacture as their favorite, but as of now, that's my second favorite. Maybe there will be a time where that album grows on me more and it ends up being my favorite, but as of now, I would say that Obsolete is, as of right now, my favorite album from these guys. I mean, that album has some of their best songs, like Shock, of course. That's a really great song, and Descent, another great track, and there's just a lot to like about that album. It's heavy and raw, and it's just a great album all around. But yeah, not a bad album from Fear Factory either. I mean, this band has basically a flawless discography, and yeah, definitely a great band. So great band in industrial metal for sure. So yeah, I think they're the only industrial metal band that I listen to. So yeah, definitely a great band. So Fear Factory, kind of underrated, and definitely a band that I think deserves more attention. And I know that there's some people that actually don't like these guys, but I personally don't understand why, because these are people that are, you know, metalheads that even don't like Fear Factory, which I don't get it, but definitely a great band regardless. Now the next band I want to talk about is Overkill, another great band that I'm kind of new to. Now this is a band that I've been familiar with for a few years now. I believe I actually checked out one of their albums sometime in 2018, I think it was. And I do remember checking out the most recent one that they did in 2019. So I've always been familiar with Overkill, but I didn't really fully get into them until this year, which is kind of surprising because even a few years ago when I have listened to Overkill, I've always liked what I've heard, but I've just, for some reason, never got into the band fully until recently. But definitely a great band, obviously thrash metal legends, of course. Yeah, definitely an underrated band, definitely a thrash band that doesn't get a lot of attention like bands like Slayer or Metallica, Megadeth, and even Anthrax to an extent. Now, Anthrax, I think, is kind of an underappreciated band, but I wouldn't say that they're necessarily underrated, so that's why they're not on the list. I would just say that they're underappreciated, not necessarily underrated, because I know there's a lot of people that really don't like Anthrax, but I mean, you could say that they're underrated. You could say that, but yeah, they're not on the list for that reason because, well, they are pretty big in the metal scene. But Overkill, on the other hand, I do think that this band is very underrated for sure. I mean, they have a lot of solid albums, of course, like Years of Decay, Under the Influence, and even some of the more recent ones like The Wings of War, The Grinding Wheel, and White Devil Armory. I mean, this band has a lot of solid material in their discography, and yeah, if you're a metalhead, haven't heard Overkill yet, definitely check them out. Definitely a great band in thrash metal. So let's go ahead and move on to what's next on the list. Now, what's next on the list is actually another thrash metal band, and that band is Death Angel. Yeah, definitely a great band that I'm also kind of new to. There was actually a friend of mine on Facebook that kind of pushed me to check these guys out, which is something that I've thought about doing for a while anyway, but yeah, what can I say? Ever since I first listened to these guys, I really am liking them. And yeah, I have yet to hear anything that I don't like from this band. I pretty much have no complaints with this band by far. I mean, they have a lot of solid albums, of course, like Frolic Through the Park, Act 3, which is by far my favorite from the band, and many other albums in their career. So yeah, Death Angel, definitely a really great band, but yeah, definitely a very solid band. Now the next band I want to talk about is actually one of my first metal bands. I don't know where I'd be in my musical journey without this band, actually, because this is the band that really helped me get into metal. So the band is Demon Hunter, and yeah, I remember the first time I first listened to these guys, I got into their song Collapsing. That was my first Demon Hunter song, and I was basically hooked ever since. I mean, definitely a great song, and yeah, definitely a great band that I think deserves more attention, especially from the metalcore community, because usually when people talk about metalcore and, you know, when they listen to metalcore, you know, they mainly go to bands like Killswitch Engage and As I Lay Dying and Trivium and many other bands like them. Now, those are all really great bands for sure, definitely some of the best in metalcore, but I do think that Demon Hunter deserves to be up there right with them, personally. I think that they deserve that same amount of popularity that those bands get, because, I don't know, Demon Hunter, there's a lot to like about these guys, a very unique band in the metalcore genre. Now, I would say out of all the metalcore bands that I'm into, I think Demon Hunter has my favorite ballads out of all metalcore ballads that any other bands have ever done or anything. I think Demon Hunter is just absolutely stellar at doing ballads for sure. And Ryan, he's got a really good voice. I mean, he's obviously one of the main reasons why Demon Hunter is such a great band, and he's really the main reason why a lot of people do like Demon Hunter, but I do think that they are a very underrated band that deserves a lot more recognition from metal fans and metalcore fans in particular, especially given the fact that Demon Hunter incorporates so many styles into their sound. I mean, they're not just metalcore. I mean, you got some grunge, you got some mellow death, some groove metal, and a bunch of other things as well. I mean, they definitely incorporate a lot into their sound. So many influences, and that's something that I definitely appreciate them for. And yeah, they definitely have a lot of solid albums, like The Triptych, which is probably my favorite from the band. I mean, that album is just absolutely stellar, and it's probably one of my favorite metalcore albums of all time. There's also The World is a Thorn, which has actually grown on me. There was a time where it was actually my least favorite Demon Hunter album, but it's grown on me tremendously. I mean, to the point where it's maybe within my top 5 these days. I don't know. It is an album that has grown on me. True Defiance is another favorite of mine. It's always been one of my favorites. Yeah, Demon Hunter, I don't know if I would say that they're my favorite metalcore band these days, not like they used to be, because there was a time where Demon Hunter was actually my favorite band of all time. Actually, there was a point where that was the case for a few years at one point. But yeah, Demon Hunter, they're definitely up there as one of the best metalcore bands, if nothing else, in my opinion. But yeah, definitely a great band, and they definitely deserved a place on the list. Now, the next band I want to talk about is Fate's Warning. Now, Fate's Warning, I've been a fan of theirs for a few years now, since 2019, and yeah, definitely a great band. Obviously, one of the pioneers of progressive metal, and yeah, I don't know how this band isn't getting more attention from metal fans and even prog metal fans in general, since they are one of the pioneers, you know. I mean, unfortunately, from what I've seen from the progressive metal community, you know, there's people that only, you know, the furthest back that they'll go is 90s prog. Like, a lot of them, I don't know if they think that, like, that's where prog metal started, or they just simply don't care about the 80s stuff. And I think that's kind of ignorance, because Fate's Warning is definitely a very great band. I mean, Ray Alder, he's got a very good voice for sure, and some favorite albums from them, for me anyway, would be Awaken the Guardian, No Exit, Perfect Symmetry, Parallels, A Pleasant Shade of Grey, and yeah, definitely a lot of solid albums. Now, I've heard some people say that they've never released a bad album, which is definitely a fair thing to say. Fate's Warning, definitely a band that I think deserves more attention. I mean, if you're into bands like Queensryche, definitely check these guys out. So Fate's Warning, definitely a great band, and they deserve a place on the list for sure. Now, the last metal band that I got to talk about for this video is Sewin. Now, Sewin is a supergroup from Sweden who is a progressive metal band, and they're heavily influenced by the band Tool, and you can definitely hear those Tool influences in their music, especially in their debut album. And this band has never released a bad album. That's something that goes without saying. And Joe, I really do like his vocals. I really like the guitar work too. And I think Sewin is actually one of those bands where their later stuff is actually better than their previous material. But like I said, there's not a weak album from this band. All their stuff is good. But Sewin, definitely a great band that I think deserves more attention. And obviously, if you're a fan of bands like Tool or maybe even Leprous, definitely check these guys out. So Sewin, definitely a great band that they deserve a place on the list for sure. So there you have it, guys. That is my list of 6 underrated bands in the metal genre. Again, I just wanted to stick with just metal bands. I could have done one for rock as well, but I couldn't really think of that many rock bands that I would say are underrated. But yeah, I just went with the metal list. So feel free to let me know what you guys think. What are some underrated metal bands in your opinion? So feel free to let me know your thoughts on my list. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day and take care.